Hello and welcome to the Spare Change podcast. Today I have on Kelly. Kelly, feel free to tell everybody about yourself. First and foremost, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Dawson. I'm excited to be here. So, as you mentioned, my name's Kelly Iannone. I am a advocate for the financial independence retire early community. I am walking that journey along with advocating for others to continue to walk that journey as well so that they can achieve financial freedom and ultimately take back control of their life. And we'll dive into my journey, I'm sure.
Awesome. So for everybody not aware, financial independence retire early, it's kind of there's a huge community surrounding it, and the whole movement has bubbled up into events like FinCon, which is where we've made our connections. And also just overall, there's online communities and places where people can go to learn more about how to become financially independent, how to set themselves up to retire before, they're not able to do anything. Super interesting to me because coming from a military background, everybody's idea is join by 18, retire by 38. So more often than not, that's not the case for a lot of folks. A lot of folks get out way earlier than that 20-year mark, whether they just get worn down and they're not having it anymore, or some circumstance came up and they're just not able to complete that journey. So what exactly got you interested in financial independence, retire early, and what about your background kind of led you in that direction?
Yeah, so I was raised by two very financially literate parents. They're blue collar workers, but the way I was raised, I was taught to invest in my 401k, work for a company for extended period of time, get a pension. At the company they retired from, they were able to retire at 50. So that's kind of how I was raised. I am originally from Michigan, moved to Florida. I actually work for the Walt Disney Company here in Central Florida. And when I started working for the company nearly 18 years ago, I kind of put it in the back of my mind. I can retire at 55 from the company with a pension. I'm going to invest in my 401k. I'm going to put in my years of service, and then I'll retire at 55 with a pension. Um, After 10, 15 years, doing a lot more self reflecting and kind of what I wanted the journey in my life to be, start having a young family. I really discovered that I didn't want to work until I was 55 if I didn't need to. And certainly seeing my parents enjoy life without having to work at such a young age, it was 50 for them. It really sparked this interest that there's got to be a better way. My husband and I had kind of an epiphany back in 2017, 18, when we both have corporate careers, kind of had this moment of realization of we didn't have as much money building up in like our savings or checkings account as we thought we should. We were investing in our 401k, so we were certainly still investing. We were not paycheck by paycheck. Um, we weren't saddled with debt per se. We may have had a car loan. He had still had student loans. But we just had this epiphany moment of going, there's got to be a better way. We've got to be able to get there quicker. And that's when I just started doing some research and found the FIRE community, the Financial Independence Retire Early community, and started listening to some podcasts and self-education. And that was kind of the first time. And I'm like, whoa, there is a way to really accelerate this process where I don't have to work until I'm 55. I can get out earlier without sacrificing my life today.
Yeah. So for me, similar kind of, maybe not so educated by my parents in the right ways. I kind of learned a lot about like what debt can really do if it gets beyond your control. Um, and that's not to like say anything negative about them. It happens to a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm. It does.
In early years in the military, I had an officer who was like really money savvy, really smart about these things. And at the start of the implementation of the blended retirement system, which overhauled the legacy retirement system, so now everybody's on a new retirement with an employer match within the military, and those folks around me that didn't have as much of an understanding were being told which way to go on their decisions with their retirements by people who had been in longer. And then this officer steps in. He's like, hey, well, maybe it's not your financial decision to make for them. So he started having sit downs every Friday. He would call it Financial Fridays, and we would discuss. And so many people, this is one of the things I love to highlight, is like so many people expect that the military's got their stuff together. When in reality, a lot of people are struggling to put like food on the table, and there's a lot of struggle in that community, and I'm sure in other communities. I don't think it's agnostic to the
Mhm.
military, but if you think people ages 18 to 25, are they actually diving into their 401k and getting a company match? Are they investing for their retirement? In a lot of cases, I don't think that that's happening at all. And
Yeah.
quite actually, like the inverse, they're taking on debt just to get by with ideas of what they should have going on.
Yeah,
So
a couple of things there, Dawson, is that what I've liked seeing, at least in the corporate world, I don't have a military background, but from a corporate standpoint, is because of that shift from like pension, I think you were saying the blended retirement to really being on the employee to fund their own retirement, is that a lot of at least larger companies have started when you start with the company, you are automatically enrolled in their 401k program for up to the match amount, let's say. And I think that is great because it gets folks started before they're actually thinking about it. Um, but it's not necessarily the financial literacy and the education piece that you're kind of speaking to there. So I think it's great that
right.
you had a resource of somebody who was astute enough to be able to stand up and go, let me help educate so that you feel empowered to make these decisions for your retirement planning. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I really do credit him with the start. I'm gonna have to like reach out to him, but one day when he's not actually so busy to have him on. And I've tried not to name drop him, but he was
Yeah.
really kind of a kickstart in, I think, myself and a lot of other folks who honestly didn't even know how to access our retirement accounts. Um, and the process was extremely complicated, especially since we were in an APO mailing address. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine, not only are you trying to communicate with a company that's stateside so that you can get all of your login access to your retirement account, but you're also doing the day-to-day tasks of whatever is going on at that time. Like,
Yeah.
this is right now, your retirement's later. Don't worry about it. We've got to do work. And I think a lot of people get caught up in maybe they are automatically enrolled and automatically matched, but if they're not paying attention, they don't have access to
Mm-hmm.
view what's going on in their retirement account. They may end up with a lot less than what they were expecting originally.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It was a
I,
surprise to me. I had used the target date funds, and it was a surprise to me when I got more educated about the fees with target date funds versus just using low fee index funds. And the count, the same thing we're taught about compound interest and how great it is. The inverse happens with compound expenses and the impact it has on your nest egg.
yeah, definitely. I think compound interest is a concept that a lot of people may be vaguely aware of, but the
Mm-hmm.
ability to continue to invest in yourself and let that money play out, definitely important for a young investor who may not have as much capital to kind of just add bits and pieces when they can, and then all of a sudden that money's doing recurring investments and it's growing in interest over time.
Mm-hmm.
Time value money is huge, especially for anyone who's really young. If you start early, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see results in the future. Um,
Totally.
but it's also
Totally.
very important to learn beyond the realm of investment vehicles that are, we'll say, more or less static in the way they function. Um, I know you have a background in real estate. I'd love to touch on it because it is different than some of the other real estate discussions I've had. Um, What exactly sparked your interest in real estate, and what made it a different and viable opportunity for you? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we had that epiphany moment several years ago and went down the rabbit hole of how do we really accelerate our path to being financially independent, the opportunity to retire early, or as I like to say, to become work optional, to really be able to make the choice of how to spend my time, I discovered real estate. And like so many people, it's okay, buy a rental house, maybe buy a duplex, you know, maybe buy a single family, then another one. You get $200 a door from each, and you have to have like 50 of them or 100 in order to be financially independent. Started going down that path, explored a variety of niches within the real estate realm, and whether it be single family, flipping, Airbnb. My husband and I, we really settled on commercial real estate with the concept being the more units we can get under one roof or in one location, the more efficiencies we will have from a roof replacement perspective, insurance perspective, larger apartment complexes. You can get property management cost effective efficiencies there as well. So we invested in our first multifamily syndication as limited partners back in 2019. And what that basically means is that invested in, we pooled our money together with other investors so that a couple individuals who had more experience could buy and operate a apartment complex, and then we shared in the return of those. So that was kind of our first entry into the multifamily space. We have then gone on, and my husband and I bought a 6 unit building, just the two of us. And we have that here in Central Florida. It cash flows great for us. We renovated the entire place. Again, a lot of learning, a lot of benefits to really see the full process of real estate. And then where we're really heavily focused right now is I'm an active real estate syndicator, which means that I help people produce double-digit returns on their money by investing in real estate, which is of course then backed by a hard asset that everybody needs a place to live in. It is insurable and it's protected. So that is really what we're focused on now. We're putting our money into it, and then we are also providing opportunities for people to invest alongside us.
So some of the things that I've seen in real estate, like you spoke to, there's a lot of different avenues to tackle that industry. Whether you want to set up a temporary lot for monthly rent, say an RV park or
Mhm.
a mobile home park, or you would like to have a condo or a duplex. There's so many avenues for real estate, and I think it's a really well diverse industry for people to kind of jump in and learn. But
So
also,
much.
like you said, you were in your first thing was a syndicated thing where it wasn't just your money that was being used to kind of run the operations. It was a group of folks who I guess could be treated as investors in the whole situation.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it was really hands free from what I understand.
For the most part. So a lot of what I do today, the investors that are investing in the apartment deals that we're acquiring is, they're busy professionals leading their corporate their corporate jobs, or they're potentially in the military on deployment, but they want to invest in real estate. Their role in it is really passive investors. So once they vet a deal and the sponsorship team, which is like the general partners that I'm on, then they just invest in the deal and they get the returns, they get the tax benefits. It's a great tool to be able to invest in real estate without having to deal with tenants, termites, or toilets. Or the other thing that is a lot of work in real estate is insurance. We don't talk about that enough, but just keeping insurance on properties is a full-time job in and of itself. And so, yes, we invested passively first, and we started learning and kind of had this aha moment. And now we are on the active side of it and bring in passive investors who can grow their wealth and their passive income through the apartment complexes that we're acquiring.
Yeah, that's actually awesome. A lot of what I didn't realize about real estate when I first started having these discussions is like there's a lot of the industry that's not you like day to day managing a property and making sure the
Hmm.
tenants aren't like destroying everything and tearing
Yeah.
walls down that were load bearing, or like all the things that
Right.
I would panic about when I was thinking about, okay, I could start a real estate business and maybe kind of dive into apartments. And like I would see all the horror stories up front where it's like,
That's all anybody talks about is the horror stories. That's what everybody talks about.
and like the legal structure of it all with like
Yeah.
tenant suits and landlord versus tenant battles in court. Like I wanted no part of that. So a lot of what I've learned from people who have experience in the industry is, hey, yes, there's a lot of work on the front end in most aspects of real estate, but if you navigate and negotiate in the right ways, you don't have to be in a spot where you're uncomfortable and you have to stress every day about the properties you're invested in. Um,
Right.
so that was definitely interesting from an outside perspective. I think it's important for people to hear that might be interested in real
Yeah.
estate.
And
Just
especially, I just want to add on, especially through this avenue as a passive investor in syndications, you literally on the front end, so you're building a relationship with whoever the operator is. So whether you're an accredited investor or a sophisticated investor, we can talk more about what that actually means. But you're vetting the sponsor to make sure that the individual, like myself, have experience and can execute on the business plan that's put forward. And then you're high level vetting the deal to make sure you're comfortable with the feasibility of what that plan is. Then you're stepping back. So to your point, you're not dealing with the day-to-day tenants, termites, toilet stuff. You're not worrying about if the tenant takes down a load-bearing wall or paints a wall purple or tears out a tree in the front yard or whatever it might be. You're also, because that's what our job is, right? We're managing it. We're making sure we're properly screening all the residents so that we don't have residents with a history that we're putting in the property. But then the other piece of it from a liability perspective, because that is a big thing, owning real estate directly has big liability. If somebody trips and falls on the property, or if the property catches on fire or something happens like that, there's a big liability piece there. So the way we set it up from a structure perspective helps protect everybody, but as a limited partner in one of these investments, as the passive investor role, their risk is limited to the actual capital you're putting into the deal, which is then, of course, protected by the actual hard assets itself. So you're really minimizing the liability risk from that standpoint.
I also want to highlight like a lot of what I've been hearing. And there's always good and bad to everything, but I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that is really surprising is how well the US like housing market is able to hold up compared to other countries' housing markets. And I wanted to, I mean, I'll probably get some bots on this video that don't like the way I'm talking, but have you seen the way that China's real estate market is going right now? And it just as a comparison factor, some of the things that I've seen out of China with just their real estate and some other industries, they didn't really set up in a way like the protections that are in the US weren't the same over there. So what happened and what I've seen is a lot of these companies were basically selling essentially a promissory note to a real estate investor. And I believe the figure was like 70% of investments, like personal investments in China, were in real estate. And that market was built on the back of they would lease land from banks, the giant like real estate companies would lease land from banks, and without breaking ground for construction they would sell that like real estate to investors all over China. And I think it was interesting to see like the lack of regulation in the Chinese market caused such an economic downturn that now they're having like bank runs and other financial issues. I think it's important to understand that the differences here allow for a much more stable industry for U.S. real estate. I think like just from my perspective outside looking in, I
Yeah.
don't know if there's any like significant issues in the real estate industry with bad actors, but I haven't seen it in the same way that it is overseas.
Yeah, I don't monitor the international market as much, but I have heard of what's happening in China right now. And a little bit, one of the big differences that was an aha moment for me when I was reading some article. So again, I'm not educated on the differences, but one article I read was that these developers are supposed to develop something, but they don't. And whoever purchased the property, they actually close before they can move in, before the project's done. Where in the States, you don't close on a project until it's built. So if somebody goes and commissions a house to be built, they may have to pay a construction loan if they're having a private, if they're having a custom home built. But if you're going to one of these big subdivisions where they're popping up houses all over, you sign a note, you put down, I don't know, $20,000 deposit. You don't pay the balance and close on the home to start paying that mortgage on $300,000-400,000 home until the home is completed. And this article that I read, it seemed like that wasn't the case in China. But again, I'm not an expert from China. I do get the question often about the uncertainty in the market right now with inflation. A jobs report just came out, and that was good, but certainly high inflation is starting to impact individual spending. Debt is rising, so household consumer debt is going up. And the 2008 housing crisis or financial crisis and the housing crisis that went with it, that's not that long ago. That's still pretty fresh in people's minds. So one of the questions I get a lot is about how are we feeling about the current state of the market from a real estate perspective, and how are we ensuring that we're not going to see another '08. And I think what's important is for individuals to understand that the foundation of the market is very different today than it was going into the 2008 housing crisis, when there was the subprime mortgage lending stuff, where there wasn't, you were getting loans with unstated income. And I was an example. I bought a house in, I think it was '05 as my first home. I still own it today, and it's a great rental property for me. But I bought a house that, quite frankly, I couldn't afford. I bought it with 100% financing. It's an 80/20 loan, interest only. Fortunately, I was able to hold on to the house, got roommates over some of the time in order to basically ride it out long enough for the value of the house to come back up and refinance it. I still own it today, but like, eyes wide open, I could see exactly what happens. In today's market, we are undersupplied. We need, I believe it's like 4.3 million more apartments by 2035 in order to meet demand. We are undersupplied. We have excess demand, which is what's driving the housing prices up, even with increased interest rates. And while that is, in present time spooking some folks, there's still excess demand out there. So it's a cost of doing business. And when I'm looking at these large apartment complexes, knowing this environment, we are underwriting with the expectation that interest rates will continue to rise for a period of time before we start to see them fall again. But this is not, interest rates are still historically low. Back in the mid '80s, interest rates were in the 16% realm. We're still in historically low interest rates. Inflation is actually good for multifamily real estate because rents go up with inflation. Yes, some expenses do go up, but you have opportunities to put operational efficiencies in. And that's where I talked about property management being one of those. So there's just, from a multifamily perspective, the market is really strong here in the US, and we're seeing a lot of international investors coming in and investing in these deals as well as a safe harbor place to put their capital.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting to look at like the kind of in-depth economics of what goes into not only real estate but just the job market, and how everything kind of is affected by whether it's something as huge as COVID or as small as like, you know, the prices in gas affecting other commodities where it hits, companies are spending gas to deliver goods and then the price on goods goes up as an effect of that. I've always kind of been super deep dive like what affects prices, and it's been
Yeah.
interesting. Um, like in high school, I had a great economics teacher. He would, he wasn't super nice about everything, but like his blunt perspective on the US economy could kind of guide people to like want to learn more. It's like,
That's
hey,
great.
this is the way it's going to be. So if you don't pay attention to my class, this is
Yeah.
not going to change. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that I've had a lot of driving factors in trying to learn more about the way money works. Just from like everything from paychecks to owning and operating your own business. It's all interesting to me. And I've had guests that are in like very diverse businesses. So I've got people I've talked to that are in accounting and people I've talked to who run like esports leagues and people
Hmm.
who I've talked to that have their own companies. So it's super interesting, and I think a lot of the value that I've gotten in the past 4 months has come from networking. I,
Totally.
I would love to highlight the fact that you're the first person that's reached out to me to come on or like have a discussion. So you know, learning
Well, I
all.
saw you were attending FinCon and I had to congratulate you on your scholarship, so and recognize you.
Yeah. So my first introduction was Mill MoneyCon in April of this year, and that was up in
Awesome.
Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. And basically, that was the first jump in. And me personally, I didn't pay for those tickets either. It was a scholarship to Mill MoneyCon. I did pay for my wife's ticket to FenCon, so we'll both be there, but just the power of networking and
Hmm.
learning from people that have done all of the trial and error for you is super
Yeah.
interesting for me. As like I just turned 24 last month, and now it's like, okay, how can I follow these people's advice and maybe even retire earlier than they have? And how can
Hmm.
I, because I've always been at least somewhat smart on money, just smart enough to like put myself in a bad situation. But I think there's a lot that I've learned over the last 4 months, whether it's building a better business plan and like having experience in developing new ideas for a business, uh, whether it's real estate or starting like just a family company. And because I've got family members that have run companies, but hasn't always been like the most perfect adventure. So I've
Yeah.
got two
I don't
families.
think there is a perfect venture though, right?
So I've got two families in real estate. So my cousin and my uncle both run like mobile home companies out of Florida. Um,
Awesome.
and my other cousin, she runs like kind of a beauty company. Uh, my grandparents before them ran a laundromat. So I was always in this mindset of like we've got to make our own money, and it doesn't always have to be like a 9 to 5. We can hire our own folks, get the job done, and like have what we need in life.
That's great because I came from a very different mindset. Like I came from a very different place where it was a you work a job, you rely on the job, that's safe.
you did
And
speak.
I've and
Um,
through my time, it's evolved to go, well, maybe it's not so safe. Uh, having been through a couple recessions with this company and mentioned I work for Disney, a lot of what Disney does is for discretionary income. You don't have to come to the theme parks. You don't have to go to the movie theater. You don't have to go buy a stuffed a stuffed animal or something. A lot of it's discretionary. So as we go through these market cycles, is my corporate job really that secure? I don't have any control on whether they keep me or not.
right.
My husband was actually furloughed. He also works for Disney. He was furloughed for 14 months during COVID. And that was the third time he has either been told he was going to be laid off or he was laid off um, through his career with the company as well. And it goes to show that you don't have as much control. And what made it so like we didn't have any financial stress during COVID because prior to that we had put ourselves in a position where we could live on one of our incomes. And I did work through COVID. And of course, we had real estate that we were also working on. And it's so empowering and fulfilling. And I think there's not enough conversation about the peace of mind that you can get from just putting yourself in a good financial position.
Yeah, I
So I
definitely
think
think
it's
it's
great that you yeah, it's great that you came from more of an entrepreneurial background and were exposed to that.
Yeah. I think my exposure to it didn't really like kick in when I was a kid, because I was also around like the okay, well, we're gonna get a pool and we're gonna get all these cars and we're gonna buy and we're not using our own money to do so. So I had like I said, good and bad experiences with it. I've been in situations where it is a single income and it might not be like the best single income to rely on. Um, so it is extremely important to kind of know there are other options,
Yes.
and not to I know you spoke on your background where you were taught more, and it did fold into some financial literacy where it's like invest in yourself, use the tools that are available to you, whether it's through your employer or
Hmm.
not. Like a 401k is valuable and it can help build some sort of nest egg for when you are ready to
Hmm.
retire. Um, I think living a life of financial independence up to your retirement is also important, though, in the aspect that, yeah, maybe you've got all this money set aside for retirement, but you can't always guarantee that your retirement's not going to be impacted by economic events. So
Hmm.
you might end up seeing your value that you've set aside for retirement be worth less if, say, you retire in 2020 and now all of a sudden the income that you were getting from retirement isn't getting you everything you thought you needed, and now you have to kind of adjust and maybe come out of
Yeah.
retirement to kind of compensate for, oh well, I didn't predict this, how am I going to have enough money to sustain myself now?
Yeah.
And
I
that's a
think
huge
the,
conversation right now where it's
hmm
like, okay, my retirement plan's not working the way I thought it would. How can I supplement that retirement income? Um, interest rates on like bonds. A lot of people looked into I bonds recently
hmm
for providing themselves income. I can provide some resources on that. I always load up like down below with
Okay.
resources. Um, so I was definitely going to bring up like anything that you have for resources or places where people can look to kind of get a start on financial independence and building, not only their retirement income, but like passive income before retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's key. You have to build your passive income before retirement. If you're building it like through real estate, as opposed to your 420, your 401k or your TSP or whatever other retirement vehicle you might be using. Those vehicles you put money in and you don't take passive income. You don't take your income out or your dividends or whatever your distribution until you hit retirement. When you're building passive income through these other sources like real estate or a business, you're building that well before you pull the plug on your job. It's really about taking that active income and converting it into passive income. And that's why I continue to work a corporate job. My husband and I, we live on one income. I could quit my corporate job. I don't, because we are taking that income to create passive income, which only strengthens our position to be able to become, to be financial independent, retire early. So, from a resource perspective, most of my resources are on real estate specifics and real estate syndications. So, I would, one place that folks can either follow me on LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. I put a lot of content out there. My name's Kelly Iannone. You'll have a link to it in the comments, I'm sure. And then my website is www.waypointcip.com, and that is my website for my real estate syndications. You can go to the website, you can learn more about them, see what any current offerings are that we have, as well as existing projects that we've closed on and performance of those. So happy to, you can also find a link to my calendar on either place. So happy to jump on a call and have more conversations about that.
That's awesome. I definitely love, at least getting to know people who are in industries that I might have interest in the future.
Yeah.
And like we've discussed, it doesn't take, you know, giving away the world just to get a start. And it
No.
can really come from anywhere. I've talked to people who run vending machines, and that's their start into passive income. And like I said, there are so many opportunities, and a lot of the times I talk about just like putting a foot in the door. If I
Hmm.
didn't talk to some if I didn't talk to somebody that I had just met on Instagram for like a couple months, I wouldn't have even gone to Mill Money Con, because that was the way I got my tickets there. He was a speaker and was able to hook me up with a
Awesome.
sponsorship. So
Yeah.
just the idea that like a couple conversations can really improve not only just your
Hmm.
like knowledge base, but almost your drive to do more to set yourself up for success. And kind of maybe you didn't think about starting a blog or a podcast. I had one episode before going to Mill Money Con. Now we're on 18. So
That's awesome.
like the idea that anybody can get their start anywhere, I think even more so in today's day and age where you've got social
Totally.
media, and like you spoke about, you've got a LinkedIn, you've got a website, people can find you all over.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge idea in self-marketing and kind of building business now. It's a different landscape than when my grandparents were doing it, where it was like, we're going to
Absolutely.
put a laundromat by the college town because the college doesn't have laundry like washers and dryers. So it's like kind of a need.
Absolutely.
Now it's, there might not
The
always be a
information's
need, but
out
there's always
there.
an opportunity. Uh,
Yes, there's information out there. And kind of to echo your point, one of the things I always say, and what I try to tell people when I'm talking to them about opportunities for investing is start small, start now. It will snowball, but you have to start. If you don't start, you're just going to sit on the sidelines and time is going to go past. Real estate is one of those things that you buy real estate and wait. You don't wait to buy real estate. It's
Absolutely.
important that you get started because you've got the appreciation, you've got the debt pay down, you obviously have the cash flow that you can reinvest while you're not living on it, as well as the tax benefits that offset the tax burden there. So buying it and waiting. One other thing I guess I would mention from a resource perspective is I can share with you a link to a post I had done earlier this year that I kind of dubbed 10 years to financial independence. It is a black and white straight line layout journey of how you can achieve financial independence in 10 years by investing $50,000 a year over the course of 10 years in order to build about $85,000 worth of passive income. And while some people may want to live on $200,000 a year, you can live a comfortable life on $85,000 a year. So I will share that link with you directly. It is pinned on my LinkedIn profile, but I'll share that link with you directly. That can sometimes be a real eye opener for people to realize just how straightforward it is to be able to achieve financial independence. You do have to get your financial house in order first, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea of like a lot of the start with personal investments, those small changes in behavior and the way you
Hmm.
spend your money and the way that you're thinking about your money. A lot of it just
Hmm.
starts with like small behavioral changes, small mindset shifts, and it can really change the entire course of your life. If you were thinking, well, I'll probably die before 65, so I'm going to spend the money I have on the stuff I want right now. And then you live to be like 93.
90.
You've set yourself up in such a way that it's like, well, I didn't plan to be alive for this long, so now I've got to like make it on scraps. Maybe that's not the way you want to live your life, and maybe you want to be kind of more free. For me, like I always tell my wife, my ultimate goal is 35, a beach in Australia, margarita in hand. Like if that is
Perfect.
not what's happening, I don't want it. Um,
Perfect.
so
And I don't know cost of living in Australia, but if Australia is too expensive, maybe it's Thailand, but it's still a beach and it's still a margarita in hand. You're just on a different beach.
honestly, I think I got spoiled just slightly by the Marine Corps and the idea that everywhere we go, there's a beach somewhere. Um, and
And thank you for your service.
I kind of took from a lot of other people where it's like I didn't really join initially for me. It's not like, and selfless service is a huge thing, and I think that's something that can be molded. on the outside too, where it's like a lot of the work that you're going to do, whether it's in business, military, coming out of college with a degree, I think everybody's going to work for everybody else until the value that they provide for other people starts returning in like form of cash and like,
Yeah.
self betterment. I think that always comes last. So I definitely think work for everybody that you can help, and then as you come out of that on the back end, all of the people that you've worked for will eventually have worked out for you in some way or form. That's why I'm like, I'm not charging anybody. I just try to bring on people with experience and knowledge, and just kind of provide that information. Speaking of, we are running short on time, so any parting words, things you wish you knew, or just kind of discussion points, and then where can people find you? I know you already spoke to that, but we'll just hit it one more time.
Yeah, I just encourage everybody to, just get started. You can't track what you don't measure. So start tracking your net worth. Look at what your spending is. Align your spending to what your values are. I mentioned my husband and I live on one income. We don't feel like we're missing out on anything. We're choosing, we've aligned our spending and we're choosing to invest in our future so that we can buy our time back. Essentially, we're buying our future time. I shared kind of where to reach me, very active on LinkedIn. So that's probably the best place to reach me, but certainly you can check out my website as well, waypointcip.com. And feel free to schedule a call and we can continue the conversation on financial independence and or real estate if you want. I'm just happy to continue to share.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate your time today, and thank you for coming on, kind of shedding some light on not only real estate, but your own journey with financial independence. I think it's very helpful to have insights from anyone. And like I said, you've got knowledge in a lot of different places, whether it's um, kind of the perspective of someone who's worked in a company and used the resources available for, like you said, 17 years working with Walt Disney, or someone who's starting in real estate and some of the different things that they can look into, or just like a different mindset and a different perspective. So I think you definitely offered a lot in our discussion today. And I think that people can learn a lot more from you, no matter what it is that they're interested in. So appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Have a great rest of your weekend. Can't talk sometimes.
That's okay. Thanks, Dawson.
All right.